Andy Burnham talked about a turning point for Britain in his speech. The numbers that we saw for his election to Makerfield suggest just that. Actually, it is a result that really knocks it out of the park and supports the idea that actually Keir Starmer could be in for a very turbulent few days because Andy Burnham's done better than I think almost anybody anticipated. Here are the raw numbers of people that voted for him. Andy Burnham won by a majority of 9,231 votes. That's almost double the amount that we saw Josh Simons, the last incumbent Labour MP for Makerfield, get. So that's quite a remarkable increase. When you remember just 6 weeks ago, the Reform UK party won in every single ward in the local elections, but actually Andy Burnham amassed 24,927 votes, more than the 15,696 votes of Reform and 3,111 of Restore. And interesting, we'll come on to this in a moment, because all the other parties really squeezed. We didn't even fitted on the Liberal Democrats there. But let's look at how the picture changed over the night and the percentages. And this just stands out so clearly. Andy Burnham got more than 50%, comfortably more than 50%. In fact, just shy of 55% of the vote. Again, in an area 6 weeks ago where Reform was dominating. Reform on 34.5% of the vote and everybody else on much less. Restore UK, there was a lot of chatter about Restore Britain in this campaign. Actually, they didn't do particularly well compared to the expectations that were set, 6.8%. But what you can say is there's been a lot of chat recently about multi-party politics. But in the end, you can see the voters in this constituency saw it as a straight fight between these two parties and voted accordingly. So you had something very rare. You had a governing party going up in a by-election mid-term, almost 10%. That's quite something. Reform UK, interesting, we'll come on to this in a moment. They actually did quite well in numerical terms. They put on votes 2.7%, but that wasn't enough to take the seat. Restore Britain, well, they didn't exist last time round, so all of the 6.8% is new. You saw the Tories go down. Interesting to see if we can find out through some analysis where that vote went. Some have gone to Reform, maybe some to Labour. People want to keep out Nigel Farage and the Greens and the rest also losing votes. But here for me is this is the graph, this is the chart that shows just what a remarkable event it's been. What Andy Burnham managed to do, if you look at this, he got 54.8% of the vote. But look how small the Liberal Democrat and the Green vote is. There's sort of just over 1 percentage point. What does that tell us? That everybody on the left of politics united behind Andy Burnham. There's no splitting of the vote. Andy Burnham managed to do really something quite remarkable in getting, as it were, the left of politics to all row in behind them. There was no splitting. But look at the right. You can see here that Reform UK, well, they got just over a third of the vote. But even that plus Restore Britain wasn't enough to come close to Andy Burnham. And I think what will be going on right now is that Andy Burnham's team will be making the argument that you could win a pretty good majority across the whole of the country if this kind of result is replicated. Because look at the Andy Burnham difference. This is the Andy Burnham difference. Nationally, and this is a YouGov poll, Labour on 19%. Right? What are they on in Makerfield? 55%. Now, that is a 36 percentage point difference between the national polls and what Brand Burnham does in Makerfield. Apparently, they didn't really use the Labour word while they were out campaigning. They just used Andy Burnham's personal brand in Makerfield. And look what difference it does between the 19 and the 55%. Whereas when it comes to Reform UK, nationally, they're in 24%. This is why I think, actually, oddly, Reform did do OK. They actually put on a percentage of the vote. What also happened is that everybody else got squeezed, particularly the Conservatives, who did badly. Interesting to note, in the Aberdeen seat, also by-elections tonight, they won there. So I don't think the Tories will be too upset by the suite of results tonight, but the Conservatives go from 90% polling nationally to 2%. So that is a pretty big result, poor result for them. Makerfield is actually, I was saying, did pretty well. Well, actually, it's their second best Reform by-election result. You can see here that 34.5% is just below Runcorn and Helsby. That one, Runcorn and Helsby, is the only seat that they actually won in a by-election. All of these, the Reform Party lost despite getting pretty decent shares of the vote. They won one, but that's their second best ever by-election performance, and yet they didn't win. All of this in a very, very engaged electorate. This is turnout. This is the figure for turnout today in the by-election, 58.7%. Now, what's really remarkable about that is if you go back to just 2024, that's a higher turnout than at the general election. You almost never see that, a higher turnout at a by-election than at the general. That was 52.5, and the other was today was 58.7, and way more than you got in the local election 6 weeks ago, where just 38% turned out. All of that will be used by Andy Burnham and his allies to tell Keir Starmer that Andy Burnham has something that Keir Starmer should not, and that Keir Starmer should consider going with dignity and without a fight. The question is, do Labour MPs, Labour ministers and the Cabinet agree? But I have to say there's pretty strong evidence, data tonight to suggest that it's a case at least worth paying attention to as the party rages an internal warfare of the next few days.